Warning: the content on this channel often covers topics that are considered eerie or scary and can be triggering to some individuals. Viewer discretion is advised.
Welcome back to Darker Things, where we explore the dark, the mysterious, and the truly terrifying corners of our history and imagination. Today, we're delving into the world of werewolves, one of the most iconic creatures to haunt our nightmares. From ancient myths to modern horror, the werewolf is a figure that shifted shape, quite literally, across cultures and time periods. We'll trace their evolution. Imagine ancient Greece, at a time when gods walked among mortals, legends were woven into everyday life. The tale begins with Lycaon, the mythical king who dared to test the gods. Lycaon served Zeus a meal of human flesh to see if the god could be fooled. In his wrath, Zeus transformed Lycaon into a wolf, condemning him to a life of isolation and primal instincts. Fate worse than death. It's a story of hubris and punishment, reminding us that our darkest deeds can bring out the beast within us. Across cultures, the idea of humans transforming into beasts was a common thread. In Norse mythology, we find the berserkers, fierce warriors who would enter a trance-like fury, donning wolf pelts and fighting with the power of beasts. Picture the battlefield. These warriors, consumed by the spirit of the wolf, became unstoppable forces, blurring the line between man and beast. The allure of the wolf, with its primal strength and independence, captivated people throughout history, from Mesopotamia to the Americas, each civilization creating its own version of this feral transformation. Fast forward to the Middle Ages, we see werewolves taking on a darker role. Europe in this time was plagued by fear of witches, of demons, and of those who walked the thin line between man and beast. The werewolf became the embodiment of that terror. Imagine the cold, damp stone of a medieval dungeon. The accused, isolated, terrified, desperate, faced accusations of transforming into wolves to commit heinous crimes. Just like witches, these supposed werewolves were hunted, tortured, and executed. The werewolf trials of France particularly, those in 16th and 17th centuries, saw many accused and punished. Fear was an effective weapon, and the church used it well. The werewolf became a warning against deviating from the righteous path. Many of those accused were individuals already on the fringes of society. The poor, the mentally ill, or those who behaved in ways that were considered strange or antisocial. Imagine being one of these outcasts, marginalized, vulnerable, and suddenly thrust into the role of a monstrous villain. In France, Gilles Garnier, a reclusive hermit, was accused of attacking and beating children. He was tortured until he confessed and was burned at the stake in 1573. The fear and the hysteria that led to these trials are palpable, reminding us of how fear and the unknown can lead to unimaginable cruelty. One of the most notable werewolf trials took place in Bedburg, Germany in the late 16th century. Peter Stub, often referred to as the Werewolf of Bedburg, was accused of transforming into a wolf and murdering villagers. After capture, Stub endured brutal torture and eventually confessed to making a pact with the devil to make the torments stop. His confession included horrific details: murder, cannibalism, even incest, all extracted under extreme duress. Stub's execution was gruesome, a spectacle meant to instill fear in the community, a stark reminder of the cost of stepping outside societal norms. Throughout history, certain werewolves have become infamous, either through legend or recorded events. Let's take a summer look at the most notable werewolves. Peter Stube, the werewolf of Bedlam, is mentioned earlier. Stube was a German farmer accused of transforming into a wolf and committing heinous crimes. Imagine the isolation he must have felt, vilified by his entire community. A man seen as more beast than human. His trial and subsequent execution became a grim testament to the hysteria of time. Gilles Garnier, the werewolf of Dole. Garnier, a hermit living near the town of Dole in France, was accused of killing and eating children. He was tortured in confessing and was burned at the stake in 1573. The story of Garnier is one of a lonely man living on the margins, an easy target for those looking for someone to blame. Jean Grenier, in 1603. Jean Grenier, a teenager in France, claimed that he'd been given a wolf skin by a mysterious man and used it to transform into a wolf. Picture a young boy desperate for attention, caught up in a dangerous fantasy. He confessed to attacking children, but due to his young age and mental instability, he was spared execution and instead spent the rest of his life in a monastery. Thies of Kaltenbrunn. Unlike other werewolves, Thies of Kaltenbrunn, an elderly Livonian man, claimed to be a good werewolf. In 1692, he testified that he and other werewolves fought the devil to protect the harvest. Thies saw himself as a defender of humanity, and his testimony painted werewolves not as monsters, but as protectors. A fascinating twist on the usual narrative. Chris Jennings, Dark Shadows. On the iconic soap opera Dark Shadows, Chris Jennings, played Dom Briscoe, was introduced as a werewolf in the late 1960s. Imagine struggling with a curse that turns you into a monster. A curse that isolates you from those you love. Chris's storyline added a poignant element of tragedy to the show, emphasizing the emotional toll of being a werewolf. In the television series Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Daniel Oz Osborne, played by Seth Green, was a beloved character who became a werewolf. Oz's transformation was initially accidental, triggered by being bitten by his young cousin. Throughout the series, Oz struggled to control his werewolf side, particularly during the full moon. Picture the gentle, quiet young man, terrified of the harm he could cause his friends, especially Willow, whom he loved dearly. His struggle was an emotional journey, portraying the delicate balance between the beast within and the desire to protect those we care about. But how did one become a werewolf? Those days, transformation myths were as varied as the regions they came from. Some believed it was a curse. Others thought it required a magical potion or even enchanted wolf pelts. Imagine the desperation of someone willing to make a deal with the devil, or the fear of being cursed by a wronged enemy. In the 17th century, a new belief emerged that the full moon triggered the change. The image of a man transforming under the silvery light of a full moon has become iconic, even though it was more of a recent addition to the lore. And then, of course, there's the silver bullet, the only weapon said to kill a werewolf. Why silver? Silver has long been associated with purity, a metal thought to ward off evil. Imagine the fear of facing a creature that could only be defeated by something so rare and precious, a symbol of humanity's last hope against the darkness. Werewolves found their way into literature early on. Marie de France, a poet from the 12th century, wrote Visclavarvet, a story about a nobleman cursed to transform into a wolf. These early tales portrayed more werewolves in more tragic lights, creatures trapped between two worlds, unable to fully belong to either. Imagine being torn between your human life and the wild instincts that drive you, never truly belonging to either world. The Gothic era added its own flair. Stories of horrifying transformations, cursed men wandering the countryside. Werewolves became companions to vampires, the Frankenstein monster, and other supernatural beings that questioned the boundaries of humanity. These were stories of inner torment, of people grappling with the monstrous parts of themselves. It wasn't long before werewolves leaped from the pages of books to the silver screen. The first significant werewolf film, 1935's Werewolf of London, introduced audiences to the idea of affirmations. But it was 1941's The Wolfman that truly defined the cinematic werewolf. With Lon Chaney Jr.'s tragic portrayal, the werewolf portrait, man cursed to become a monster under the powerless to stop himself from wreaking havoc. Imagine the pain of knowing that, under the moonlight, you become a danger to those you love, unable to control the beast within. The Howling and An American Werewolf in London were landmark films in the 1980s that redefined werewolves for a modern audience. Howling, directed by Joe Dante, brought a more visceral and frightening take on the myth, blending horror and psychological elements. Transformation scenes were groundbreaking, showcasing the pain and horror of becoming a werewolf in a way that audiences had never seen before. Imagine the agony of bones breaking and reforming, of skin stretching to accommodate the monstrous change. It was a true nightmare brought to life. On the other hand, An American Werewolf in London, directed by John Landis, blended horror with dark humor, making it a unique entry into the genre. Its iconic transformation scene, achieved through practical effects, remains one of the most memorable in horror cinema. A mix of scares and wit gave it a lasting impact, showing that werewolf stories could be both terrifying and entertaining. Picture the protagonist's helplessness as his body contorts and changes, all while his humanity slips away. A perfect blend of horror and tragic comedy. In 1985, Teen Wolf, starring Michael J. Fox, offered a completely different take on the werewolf myth. Instead of a horror film, Teen Wolf was a lighthearted comedy about a teenager who discovers that he comes from a family of werewolves. Unlike the tragic fate of the Wolfman or the visceral transformations of the Howling, Teen Wolf presented the werewolf transformation as a metaphor for puberty and the awkwardness of adolescence. The film became a cultural touchstone, resonating with audiences who saw Scott Howard's transformation a reflection of their own struggles with identity and fitting in. Imagine the mix of excitement and fear that comes with discovering a secret power, a power that makes you different, but also sets you apart. It was a coming-of-age story wrapped in supernatural elements, and it showed that werewolves could be fun, relatable, and even heroic. Decades later, MTV's Teen Wolf series reimagined the concept for a new generation, taking a much darker, more dramatic approach. The show, which aired from 2011 to 2017, turned the lighthearted comedy of the original film into a supernatural drama filled with suspense, danger, and complex relationships. Imagine being a teenager struggling not only with the usual pressures of high school, but also with a constant threat of losing control and becoming a monster. Transformation into a werewolf in the series was portrayed as both a blessing and a curse, with the main character, Scott McCall, facing real threats, enemies, and internal struggles. The MTV version emphasized the horror elements, with intense action scenes, and darker storylines, while also focusing on the emotional and psychological impact of being a werewolf. In contrast, the original Teen Wolf film used the transformation primarily for comedic effect, as a metaphor for teenage angst. The differences between the two reflect how the werewolf myth can be adapted to suit different tones and audiences, from lighthearted comedy to dark, supernatural drama. Television has played a huge role in shaping the modern image of the werewolf. Buffy the Vampire Slayer to MTV's Teen Wolf, werewolves have been depicted as complex characters, often struggling to control their transformations while trying to lead normal lives. Imagine constant fear of losing control, hurting people you care about. These werewolves were no longer mindless monsters. They were people with real emotions, relatable struggles, and sometimes heroic qualities. In popular culture, werewolves have evolved into symbols of the outsider, those who are different, those who must hide their true nature from the world. This resonates with audiences, giving the werewolf a unique place in modern storytelling. The werewolf legend introduces us to various forms that these creatures can take, each representing different aspects of their nature and abilities. These forms range from almost entirely human to the monstrous wolf-like beast of our nightmares. In the Homid form, this form, the werewolf appears completely human, indistinguishable from an ordinary person. This form allows them to blend in with society, hiding the beast within and living undetected among humans. The Glabro form. The new human form is a step between human and beast. The werewolf becomes more muscular, rougher features, slightly elongated teeth, and sharper nails. This form still appears human, but gives off an aura of menace, making it ideal for intimidation. In the Krynos form, this is the terrifying hybrid form often depicted in popular culture. Standing upright with a muscular body covered in fur, the Krynos form has elongated claws and a wolf-like head. It embodies raw power and primal rage, making it the ultimate war form for combat and intimidation. The Hispo form. This form resembles an oversized feral wolf, much larger, more powerful than a natural wolf. The Hispo form is used for hunting and traversing wild terrain quickly. It combines the ferocity of a wolf with the unnatural size and power of a supernatural predator. The Lupus form. This form, the werewolf takes the appearance of a regular wolf. This form is used for stealth, tracking, blending in with the wilderness. It allows the werewolf to move unnoticed among wolves and other wildlife, fully embracing their connection to nature. Each form serves a distinct purpose. Subtlety and social interaction in human form. Fiercest Krynos form meant for battle. These transformations highlight the complex nature of the werewolf, constantly struggling to balance their humanity with the primal instincts of the beast within. What is it about the werewolf that keeps us coming back? Perhaps it's the dual nature of humanity that the werewolf represents, the idea that beneath our civilized exteriors lies something primal, uncontrollable. Imagine the fear of losing control, becoming something you don't recognize, something dangerous. Werewolves symbolize the internal struggle, anger, passion, transformation. They're a reminder that no matter how far we've come, we're still connected to something wild. In modern interpretations, lycanthropy is often used as a metaphor for change, puberty, mental health struggles, the turmoil of self-discovery. Werewolf's transformation is a powerful symbol of any number of human experiences, which is why the myth endures and why filmmakers and writers continue to reinvent it for generations. Werewolves and vampires have often been portrayed as two sides of the same supernatural coin. One controlled, suave, and immortal, the other raw, primal, and unpredictable. Imagine the eternal rivalry. The refined vampire always in control versus the werewolf whose power is wild and untamed. This rivalry has fueled popular franchises, Twilight and Underworld, where these creatures are locked in eternal conflict, each representing different aspects of power, immortality, and humanity. ancient Greece, modern-day Hollywood, werewolves have captivated our imaginations, evolving from feared monsters to complex, sympathetic figures. The werewolf myth continues to resonate because it speaks to something deep within us, our fears, our desires, our struggle with our own nature. Imagine the howl of a wolf under the full moon, a sound that echoes the wilderness within all of us. As long as we have stories to tell, the werewolf will continue to stalk our darkest dreams. So the next time you hear the howl of a wolf under a full moon, remember, there may be more to the story than meets the eye. Thanks for joining us on this dark journey. Don't forget to subscribe for more tales from the shadows. And let us know in the comments, what's your favorite werewolf legend? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Do you have a favorite werewolf story? Or perhaps a myth from your culture we haven't covered? Share it with us. And let's keep exploring the dark together. And remember, once you enter the dark, you may never be the same.